any particular modulars where you've decided to say, okay, I'm going to kind of siphon off the SAP kind of ecosystem, and maybe for customer relation management, for example? Obviously, it's so important for what you do on the digital e-commerce side. Do you embrace a SaaS name like Salesforce, or are you still just going to use an SAP module for that?
So it's a great question. We actually just asked ourselves that this past year.
Right.
Yeah, and we just we kind of struggled with that because they both have a lot to them. And ultimately, SAP did win out, but really because of the traditional infrastructure that's in place so much
Right.
that our teams are used to. We are a Salesforce environment. We do Salesforce Commerce Cloud for our digital presence, not for all of it, but for most of it. Some of our 3D modeling apps and all are not on that, but for a good reason, right? I like gaming tech on those things and not a traditional infrastructure, right? But we do use it, and it does have a tremendous draw into what they're keeping up with in order for our consumers to feel like they're getting the best experience. And we're also giving them the best consumer experience they can have. But for us, our struggle sat with where our ERP was to help it collectively sit well within the infrastructure that we have today.
Yeah, and that's almost sort of an internal versus external, right? You're taking two different approaches there. So externally, you're right, the Salesforce Digital Commerce Cloud is fantastic, and you can layer in things like Einstein Analytics on what's going on there. And now they even have Tableau, right? So you can get direct reporting on it. And that seems to be a pretty strong alignment. Is that something that's part of your strategy from an e-commerce perspective?
It is. In fact, we're looking at MuleSoft
Sure,
on top
sure.
of that, right? So yeah, so it is. I mean, look, the digital space, I'm not one to sit back. In my first year, we threw in, 7 sites and threw in an app, right? So I'm not going to sit still. I like my 90-day or less builds. And so I need a partnership that's going to keep up with that, but also keep up with the technology around it so that I'm not waiting for my reporting and analytics to catch me up. And so Salesforce has that, and they've got the ability to keep building on that, but but there's more to it, right? There is these infrastructures and hierarchies do have some latency to them within the core applications, just like in SAP or anywhere else, right? There is that structure in there. And the problem with digital is no one, your consumer doesn't care that you have structure, right? You have to go from A to B, right? They care that they've had the best experience. And so I am very much a believer for the best experience. I like to give our consumers something different, and I'm building towards that today. And so I need boxes that build with me because I don't think in a box, I think outside the box. I just have to use a box to do it,
And sometimes those boxes are already there before you got there, right? So you have to
They
navigate
them. They are.
Yeah.
It was fun using some other tech in between where you still feel like you get to be a kid again, right?
Right. Play with the new shiny toys.
Exactly. And you know what? I'll be honest again, we go back to, how the teams like to play. If you give your team a nice new shiny toy like that and you say, but by the way, you've got, 70% over here is all going to be box and over here is going to be your playroom. They'll stick with that any day because as long as they have something else, right?
No, I completely agree. I'm going to ask maybe an add-on to this. I recently did a panel late last week on Friday, and it was about the customer experience management space or the CXM space. And
yeah,
a few of your peers said, well, CRM is naturally evolving to CXM, that it's no longer just about like, okay, here's our relationship and I need to know analytics and data around it. It needs to be a true omni-channel support experience around that entire life cycle of the customer relationship. And we were talking, and I was actually specifically asking about names like Qualtrics, which I do believe works well with SAP. Medallia is another one that's out there, and then this brand new one that just IPO'd, Sprinkler. But I was really surprised that a lot of the people said, I would bet longer term on Salesforce. They have the capabilities, and I don't see any reason why they can't naturally make that transition themselves. So I'm just curious if you have any experience around that CXM type of software environment and what your theory is there.
Yeah, and it's an interesting conversation. I love how our industries go through these buzzwords, right? And it's so funny, right? And they all think, oh, this is a big thing. This is it. So I'm like you, I sit on panels and everybody goes, oh, let's talk about this. And I'm like, oh, great, 12 months of this, whatever this buzzword might be. And I think right now, right, the consumer journey is so critical, and people are saying, what do you want to do? And I see a lot about Sprinkle and everything else. And the question is, where do you go, and what's the difference? I think for now, if you're already a Salesforce partner, right, sometimes it's easier to watch someone who's, let's face it, companies like that. And I love some of the other businesses out there, and internally we use a different tactic, right? So internally, when I'm servicing my 4,000, 5,000 associates globally, I'm using a different tactic than I am externally. But the reason for that is because internally I'm giving them a different service, but it's top notch, right? And I want to hear from them. I want to interact with them. I want to do a lot with them differently. I want them to use the skills and things I already have, to feel very confident. But externally, my consumers are all over the world. They're, multiple language, they're multiple issues. They're trying to figure out who we are and what we can offer to them. And they want to communicate with us in different ways. And I think because a lot of our tool sets sit within Salesforce, that is our directive for now. But I am curious about how some of these other ones prop themselves up and what kind of integrations and offerings that they're going to have. The core there is simplicity and integration processing, and not a high cost at the end of the day, right? Because these aren't areas that you can give up.
I don't know what happened, Dara. I lost your audio.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yep. So these are industries that these are sections of your business that you can't afford to have downtime on.
Certainly.
Because no one's going to understand that. So I think for us, you stick with what you have and know. Salesforce it's been a force for a long time now, right? Look at who's running ServiceNow. It used to be someone from the SAP side, and people from Salesforce now are running into other big conglomerates to use their tactics and knowledge. So we'll see how some of these other areas really start building themselves upward, and then see what changes big companies like myself start to take chances on.
No, I appreciate that, and you're 100% right about your comment on the consumers are not really are going. They don't really care, and even less so than they did a few years ago. There's been a real difference in that buying pattern, and you only have milliseconds to get where you need to be, and if you stumble, they will just move on.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing, right? We're putting in so much into that now, but it was interesting because during the pandemic, I feel like people were a lot more patient. If Amazon said to them, listen, it's going to take me 14 days to get the package, every person knew that, and every person understood that. If Amazon tried that today, post-pandemic, not fully, obviously we all know we're still here, but if Amazon tried to tell you it was 14 days to get something typically every time you order from them now, that consumer is going to leave them, right? Because no longer, that patience lasts for such a period of time. And so people are really in this at-once mode. They were, everything's fast and efficient. And the problem is we've given it to them that way, right? As a service, businesses have built their models around that. And so why could we expect them to change from that, right? So we need to be able to manage and support them.